Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox, on this rather bright, sunny and cold Friday morning. Last Friday of the month. Next Friday will be well into May, and I bet it's still just as cold. However, to warm the cockles of our hearts, we do have the potential that HumzaYousaf is about to resign. Maybe. I did say in my video last night it was a rumour. That said, STV are running with it, and they are the mouthpiece of the SNP. As indeed is the Times of London, big newspaper. That tends not to get things too wrong too often. And they're running with the story, so that you can see the speculation is mounting that he'll go. Now, of course, come 9:30, we'll find out if that's the case. But there is a saying that you shouldn't mess with people on your way up, or they will screw you on the way down. And for Fergus Ewing, there is a little bit of schadenfreude going on. It was, of course, HumzaYousaf who caused Fergus Ewing to get suspended for a week, losing the whip for a week, because he voted against, not his own party, but the Greens, when he voted to get rid of Lorna Slater. And now Humza's got rid of Lorna Slater permanently. Will he apologise to Fergus? Probably not. But since there's going to be a vote of no confidence, and let's face it, Fergus is never going to be the leader, there's nothing stopping Fergus from voting against HumzaYousaf, knowing that Fergus's very good friend Kate Forbes is likely to take over. Fergus could be kingmaker, or queenmaker perhaps. Let's have a look at this article written by Fergus Ewing, in which he lays out his thoughts on the matter. Here goes. So, HumzaYousaf should eat a slice of humble pie over his Faustian pack with the Scottish Greens, and this obviously by Fergus Ewing. I don't know about a slice of humble pie. He needs to eat several humble pies. He sat there and for so long, every day, the Greens are brilliant, the Greens are great, the Greens are worth their weight in gold. Right up until even the evening before. And then all of a sudden, bang, gone. And we all know that this is down to Stephen Flynn, coming up and having his little word in several shell-likes around Holyrood, most notoriously huddled in a conspiratorial whispering session with Angus Robertson. And I think it spooked HumzaYousaf. I think HumzaYousaf saw the writing on the wall. He knew he wasn't going to be able to keep the Greens on board, or there would have been an absolute mutiny. Well, it seems the mutiny is not yet over, despite him getting rid of the Greens. The mathematics is quite simple. There are enough opposition to oust HumzaYousaf. His only saving grace is that Ash Regan may keep him on. She may vote for him. If that's the case, then of course it actually comes to a draw. That leaves the presiding officer, and the presiding officer will usually vote in the way of the leading party. In this case, the SNP, which would mean that he would stay. However, the presiding officer is a Green, and she may vote with her party. There's no obligation for the presiding officer to vote with the SNP as the leading party, the party in power. It's just the convention to do so. But she's not under any legal obligation to do so. So even then, he may not qualify and get through. He may lose that vote. That's assuming, of course, that everyone in the SNP votes for HumzaYousaf. Will Fergus Ewing? After all, Fergus Ewing was done very badly by HumzaYousaf. Now, he doesn't necessarily even have to vote against him. He could just become very ill that day. Oh, sore chest. Not going to make it in. Going to stay at home. And that's Humza screwed. And it won't just necessarily be Fergus Ewing. But if Fergus Ewing does do it, and Humza's very angry with that, but Fergus won't have much to worry about, of course, because if it is the case and Humza has to go, then Fergus is saved by his chum, Kate Forbes. Because Kate Forbes comes in, she gives Fergus a nice beefy roll somewhere. Something that Fergus could do. Transport. Give him transport. He'd like that. He'd push through the A9 and the A96 quick as that, wouldn't he? So, he could have a nice little roll. Thank you very much. And Humza would be sent to the back benches, and then he'd sit there and growl and moan and leer like that, like a miserable old man, and then eventually be voted out at the next election, whenever that would be. And that, of course, is assuming, and this is a very, very big if, that's assuming that after he resigns, that they can even get a First Minister voted. It's not necessarily so. And of course, if it goes 28 days without First Minister, then there's automatically an election, which they can't afford to fight. They've got a general election to fight. They can't fight. They can't afford to fight a general election and a Holyrood election in the same short period of time. They're bankrupt. It's joyous to behold, and the permutations are immense. Now, of course, we must not forget one basic tenet, and that is if he loses the no confidence vote, he doesn't necessarily have to resign, but he'll find it very, very difficult to control the party. And I think the party itself will turn on him at that point. And it'll become clear that they need a new leader. And of course, there will be an emerging, and it'll be Kate Forbes. I know Neil Gray's desperate for it, but Neil Gray is just not up to the job, and he's not a leader. If anything, he's less of a leader, I feel, than HumzaYousaf. It's weird, isn't it? But we'll just very quickly have a look at this. The SNP power sharing deal with the Scottish Greens was leading them towards electoral hell, argues Fergus Ewing, who was disciplined by the SNP and particularly by HumzaYousaf, who could have called it off as leader and didn't. And that's for failing to support a Scottish Green minister, failing to support someone who's not even in his own party. Never have the Greens looked so glum when their ex-ministers left Bute House, having been prized from government office. And so the nightmare of being in a coalition with a party of extremists has finally ended. And I've got to say that apparently all around the House, all parties, with the exception of the Greens, are all slightly relieved. They've all said within, hours of this thing going, and they're all sitting up in the back and whatever, said the whole mood of the House lifted, and people were sneering at them, and nobody could stop the grin on their faces as they were looking at the Greens. The Greens were not happy. Although even if they were happy, you couldn't tell, because they're always miserable bastards, aren't they? Anyway, it was in the summer of 2021, he writes, that Nicola Sturgeon recommended to the SNP MSP group that we enter this deal. He said, I was the lone voice against it, arguing we'd been tarnished by association with them. The SNP had always put people of Scotland first, but green policies would put about half the population out of work. They wanted to close down our oil and gas sector, the chemical industry, shut down fish farming, curtail sea fishing, instruct farmers how to farm and not produce much food. How on earth could a party of government associate with these extreme and absurd policies? But for many, it was perhaps their smug sense of superiority on policies about social and moral issues that grated most. On gender reform, the cash review, conversion therapy, those who did not agree with them were often labelled as extreme right-wingers. Oh yes, anyone who does not agree with the Greens is an extreme right-winger, even when they're quite clearly not. Their sanctimony so enraged tens of thousands of people that they resigned their SNP memberships. Our support in opinion polls and elections has plummeted. Had we remained in this dire deal, we would, in my view, have been annihilated at the 2026 Holyrood election. I think you're still going to be. I think it's far too late. HumzaYousaf faced growing pressure for a revote of SNP members on the deal. He would have most likely lost. The Greens are wholly unsuited to government, not being prepared to listen, compromise or respond to the public opinion. That's the thing, they will not compromise. It's this or nothing. This, they stamp their feet. This, or they walk away. You can't have government like that. And so, boom, they're out. And that's the trouble. But they are like children. They're schoolboy politics. It's my way or the highway. Play the game the way I want, or I'm taking me ball home, Their appalling record in government drove me to speak out, says Ewing. He says, I simply couldn't support Lorna Slater remaining a minister. Businesses in my patch said they would have closed their doors had her deposit return scheme gone ahead. She was put in charge of a policy with an estimated net present value of $2.5 billion over 25 years. Would anyone in business put a novice trainee manager in charge of such a project? I think one of the problems, just as an aside, is that you've got so few people that have actually been out there in the real world and actually worked in the real world and got experience of running major projects and things, that this was never going to happen. We need to stop voting for professional politicians and maybe have a law that says that you cannot stand for politics until you've done at least 10 years in a genuine, real job, non-political job. And that way you're coming in, you're bringing expertise with you. Who knows? Anyway, he said the Does DRS ended up in the policy recycling unit along with the highly protected marine areas, ludicrous heat pump targets, the gender reform law and climate targets. He says, I was suspended from the SNP group for the sin of not supporting a Green minister. Now Yousaf has sacked them both. I'm not calling on him to be suspended, but I do call on him to conduct a spring clean of policies and scrap other dire Butte House Agreement plans. Absolutely get rid of, and especially all the heat pump bollocks that's going on. That will individually destroy the entire Scottish housing industry. And certainly abolish rent controls. Always failed. We've shown it time and time again. All the experts agree that it's a failure and it will destroy the rental sector. He has a chance to change the message. Oh, no, he doesn't. He's gone. Fingers crossed, anyway. He has a chance to change the message, focus on priorities like the economy, health and education, and work constructively with other main parties. Most people want that, and that's what we did successfully with just 47 MSPs under Alex Salmond's excellent leadership. And that's the difference. When you've got a leader, you can do things. When you've got a tosser, you can't. He says, I don't want Humza to be disciplined as he disciplined me, but consuming a slice of humble pie may go down well with those alienated by the deal with the Greens. A Faustian pact which would have delivered us to the gates of electoral hell. Now he has the opportunity to regain the public's trust and confidence and begin the long journey back to popularity and success. Not a chance in hell. That trust has gone, and it's gone forever. It's never coming back. HumzaYousaf has blown it, and he blew it day one. He's a weak man in a position he's not suited to. Anyway, coming up. I think whatever happens, we are moving towards the end game of HumzaYousaf's leadership. I think it's a matter now of when, not if, and he cannot sustain authority. He has no internal party authority. There's too many people now see him as weak, see him as done, see him as already yesterday's man, someone written into the annals of history rather than being a dynamic and forceful leader, someone who's leading for change, someone who's looking to improve the lives of people in Scotland, because the record shows that that's not exactly what he wants to do. He wants to destroy Scotland. That's evident. One only has to look at his record. Anyway, Fergus holds it there. Fergus could be ill on the day. That would be a shame. It wouldn't put it past him, and we'll have to see what happens, especially if by being ill on the day Kate Forbes becomes the leader and anoints him as someone senior in her cabinet, assuming they can appoint her as First Minister, of course. Finish there. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and I will speak to you later. Bye.